Have you ever been trading gold and all of a sudden there is a huge monster candle that seems to come out of nowhere? Well, in today's video, we're talking about news events, how to know when they're coming, which ones matter, and which ones impact certain markets like gold, indices, FX, and more. As we get started, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new, and let's jump into News Events 101. So the first thing you need to know, if you don't already, is that big news events seriously can move the markets, like this candle, which can print all of a sudden a massive spike up or down in the price of gold or the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, individual stocks, currencies, etc. And what you'll also find is most of the time, it's the same news points that are moving all of the markets at once. So now that we've seen some examples, why do news events cause such big movements in markets, and which ones should you be focused on so that you know that they're coming or could potentially even trade around them? We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, let's address this first question. Why do news events matter? At the end of the day, the real world is what the markets trade based on. When gas prices at the gas pump go up, or when the grocery prices change, or people start losing their jobs, these things really matter, and it drastically changes the prices of many different assets, indices, etc. And these things, as they come into the market, are being taken minute by minute. So for example, if we find out in the jobs report that a bunch of people just got laid off, that can spook the market and cause some selling on things like stocks, or maybe cause people to rush into a safe haven asset like gold. These events matter because they ultimately change our reality, which is what the markets trade based off of. But which news events matter? The short answer is all of them. The longer answer is it depends on which market you're looking at. And then up next, we'll talk about where you can find these news releases for free. So I've broken this into 4 key categories that we're going to want to keep an eye on. First of all, we're going to talk about jobs data. This is going to be things like your NFP or non-farm payroll reports, which give us an insight into the US economy specifically, but major economies all around the world post their jobs data to give an insight on their economy. We also have inflation data, which tracks prices of goods and services over time to get an idea of how that is changing, which drastically can impact our real world lives. You know, you go to the grocery store and the prices are going up dramatically, that would be a period of high inflation. Or we talk about growth data, right? Growth data is going to be sort of metrics about the economy, like GDP statistics, which is the gross domestic product or the output of the economy in question. Of course, we can look at the European economy, we can look at the US, Japanese, Chinese. We have all these different economies that we can look at from a growth metric perspective. And finally, geopolitical data, which is the wild card of the 4, because geopolitical data can be sort of breaking news now, like some sort of geopolitical conflict breaking out or some natural disaster, things like that, that can suddenly cause significant moves in markets. Now, just real quick on this last one, this one is really hard to see coming. In fact, nobody can really see this coming. For example, an oil tanker drops off and spills a bunch of oil into the ocean. That's not something that you and I can foresee coming per se, but it can still dramatically impact our charts. So this one is the wild card. However, the first 3, jobs, inflation, and growth metrics, can regularly be observed on a website that I'm about to show you. In fact, I'll actually show you 2. The first website that I'm going to show you is forexfactory.com. Now, what this really does is it creates an economic calendar for you to see upcoming major events. And what's nice about this is you can actually filter it too. Like, let's say you only really care about let's say just the US data, and you really want to isolate it to red folder events. Now, this red folder signifies that it is a significant metric. Now, we can also filter by event types actually and do growth, inflation, employment, central banks, etc. And again, all of these things matter, but some of them more so than others. And what's cool is Forex Factory goes ahead and creates it as a red folder if it is significantly impactful to price, although these things can too cause big prices, but generally red folders are going to be expected to cause big prices. You can also filter this, play around with your settings here, and you can see, like, for example, at the time of recording this, tomorrow is Wednesday, we have a FOMC statement, which is essentially the Fed. Jerome Powell will be getting up on a stand and giving a press conference about the Federal Reserve's projections for interest rates. Those are huge market moving events, and by having an economic calendar here, we can track when they are likely to impact. Of course, you'll want to also adjust your date time settings to account for your local time. And real quick, I wanted to let you know about today's video sponsor, DNA Funded. If you're looking to get funded this year, this might be the right fit for you. Now, I do tell everyone when it comes to prop firm trading and prop firm funding, make sure that you are already at a consistent level with your trading. But if you do lack capital but have the skills, here's some information about DNA Funded. They offer payouts in as low as 7 days. They offer profit sharing up to 90%. They offer unlimited trading days on both their 1 and 2 phase challenge, and you can trade over 800 different assets on their platform. And they are also offering subscribers of my YouTube channel a significant discount with the promo code that you see on your screen right now, A1T20. They'll give you 20% off for a limited time. So check out DNA Funded down below in the description, and remember to use that promo code if you choose to go the funded route. Now back to the video. Another calendar option that you have is fxstreet.com. Simply navigate to their economic calendar and scroll down. What you can see here is you have a bunch of data points coming in, and similar to what we just got done discussing, you can of course change your filters to include just specifically something that you want. Like if you just want to look at US, UK, Eurozone, etc., then you can just make these adjustments, play around with your settings, and this is going to show you data points that are dropping up to the minute. As data releases, you can see it pretty quick here on these pages, and this is just going to be a standard calendar view of key economic metrics coming out, and it could be something that you add into your daily analysis to check to see if there is news coming down the pipeline. Although my personal preference is to look a week ahead to see what is coming down the pipeline ahead of time. Now, just so you're aware of some of the names around these things, let's talk about what you might see if you're looking for jobs data. NFP or non-farm payroll, employment change, unemployment claims. You also have ADP. These are some of the metrics, and of course I have videos on all these topics. If you want to better understand what these metrics specifically mean, check out this playlist in the top right hand of the screen where I've done a breakdown on most of these economic metrics, what they mean, and how they can impact the specific charts that you're interested in. In fact, I highly recommend that you check out that playlist if you're really interested in learning more about what these news events kind of actually tell you about the underlying economy and how those trends can actually be traded upon. It's something that I do and spend a lot of time focusing on. With inflation data, you have CPI or the Consumer Price Index, the PPI or Producer Price Index, and the PCE, which is Personal Consumption Expenditure. And these inflation data points, again, without having to go into the nitty-gritty of what these things tell you, it's essentially price changes in the economy. And again, I do have videos on these subjects if you want to better understand them. In fact, even if you're not a fundamental trader, I highly recommend you check those videos out. Knowing more about what the data points that are releasing are a really important thing. Even if you don't necessarily trade based on them, knowing what they are just grows your understanding of markets. The next section is growth data. So this is going to be things like services PMIs or purchasing managers index, manufacturing PMIs, GDP statistics, which we outlined earlier as gross domestic product, and retail sales numbers. Again, videos on each of these subjects can be found in the playlist in the top right. And then we have geopolitical data. And this is actually not really data, it's more just geopolitical headlines and news. And for this, the easiest way I can say is just to do a quick Google search and you'll see if there is any sort of headlines. Global news can help you to just keep an eye on this stuff, although I don't personally make huge trades based off of it personally. I'll tell you why in just a second. But these are going to be things like war outbreaks, pandemics, trade dynamics, territory disputes, oil spills, natural disasters, pretty much anything in the real world that dramatically impacts our charts that we can't see coming or put a timer around, right? So geopolitical data, or I'm sorry, geopolitical events, again, are not something I trade based on because they are very spur of the moment, and it's very hard to make sort of a gut decision as to whether something is a buy or sell just off of these sorts of events. In fact, what I typically do with these sorts of things is when you get news releases of really scary events hitting the wire, oftentimes you see the market initially panic only to snap back. So I actually tend to use these as opportunities to enter the market, which sounds a little bit like an opportunist in crisis, but genuinely it is really oftentimes what you see in markets is you get something really scary hit the timeline, everything kind of drops and usually pops back. Not always, but and you know, be careful with that with everything else, but that's generally how I view geopolitical data.